I was not ready for Hitman to be this good. I've brought up slow motion car crash movies usually with the horror genre, where you can clearly feel that everything is going to come crashing down around the characters, and surprisingly, this was a prime example of that. Welcome to Sandwich Reviews. I'm the Talking Sentient Sandwich, and I had so much fun watching Hitman. Mainly, I'm glad I didn't watch any trailers or any marketing, because I figured this would be a generic action movie, and it turned out to be the furthest thing you can get from that. After hearing it was great, I turned on Netflix and flicked to it on a whim. And in that moment, I saw this poster and the genre saying comedy, and I was immediately intrigued. Early on, it's revealed what kind of movie it is, but the way my interest in this movie skyrocketed in that second I saw the title screen before even seeing the first shot was what really made me want to make this review. In case you haven't seen the marketing like me, I'll keep it vague. But while this movie was entertaining more than anything else, it was also stressful, just for when it came to the well-developed conflict and drama. It took a while for the main crux of the story to begin, maybe 40 minutes to an hour, but I was still interested in what was happening before then, though I was waiting for the actual story and conflict to get started. Along with that, multiple times the movie follows a well-used cliche where the themes are being talked about during a classroom scene, but I was always fully engaged each and every time the movie went back to a classroom. So if you're looking for an incredibly entertaining film to kill a couple of hours, check out Hitman on Netflix. But now, let's get into the spoilers so I can finally talk about what this story is. Because the whole idea of the title, Hitman, is only a facade. The narrative follows the real-life story of Gary Johnson, a mild-mannered teacher who through a series of events ends up as an undercover operative. And whenever he was going undercover, the movie was just stressful because I was waiting for him to be caught. He was incredible, and every new character was more hilarious than the last. I especially liked the 30 seconds we saw of his Patrick Bateman, and yet, during every one of those scenes, I was waiting for the penny to drop. And while I wish that drop was more impactful, the suspense that led up to that moment was perfect. The narrative itself is much more of a rom-com, with Gary and a potential killer and suspect, and though I typically don't go for romance movies, I did appreciate the buckets of chemistry these two leads had. And of course, the details of the true story are shifted around or changed entirely to keep the audience guessing at every turn. But the ending went way off script, but I think I loved that aspect of it just because the movie ended and I just sat there asking myself, then how do we know about this story? Then the message that the real Gary never hurt anyone came on screen and it all made sense. Because before that message, I was sure the movie would end with them being caught for the murder they committed and they wrote a tell-all during their prison sentence or something. Though the fabricated ending does allow for it to wrap up the characters' conflict in a neat little bow, because the conversations brought up throughout the movie that backed up the themes of changing oneself and how our ego affects our daily lives was so interesting to me. I'm no philosophy professor like the real-life Gary Johnson, but I am a guy on the internet who likes to talk about movies, so basically an expert. But in all seriousness, the themes brought up weren't just thought-provoking. The film actually comes up with an answer for all of the philosophical questions asked. Starting with, can a person change? Whether or not you believe that someone can or can't change over time, the movie states that yes, we can. We are born as our true selves, but the person we desire to be is something that, depending on the person's confidence and motivation, can slowly develop more and more until that person looks in the mirror one day and realizes they are. The id is something that should be allowed to come out from time to time, but relying on it to function socially or just function at all is unhealthy and dangerous. The ego and superego, to an extent, keep the id from running wild and unchecked. Social awkwardness and paranoia kept Gary from realizing his potential, and once his superego quieted enough for him to become Ron more and more, the movie demonstrated how seductive that consciousness can seem. Yet it will always end in a disaster, because our superego usually keeps us from that disaster. And the morality of allowing yourself to become that person, whether you should or shouldn't, may be much more subjective from person to person, but so long as there is a healthy balance, it should be fine. I mean, the movie demonstrates this with terrible people, but with that, it's allowed to dive even deeper into its discussion on morality. It's always more interesting to follow a flawed main character, but more than that, the movie is allowed to ask if someone is a terrible person, does that mean killing them is objectively good? Are you doing a service to society by getting rid of that person? And on the other side of that, shouldn't you never kill anyone because doesn't everyone deserve a second chance? It's a debate in fiction that I will always have a hard time answering. But I guess in this movie's case, I was all for it. But that may just be because the two killers were charismatic and the person they killed was a dick. But those are all my thoughts on the movie Hitman. If you've seen it, let me know what you think of it down in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for weekly video essays and reviews, and enjoy a delicious sandwich.